Humans are the remarkable outcome of an ancient ape lineage that ventured out onto the open, ever-expanding savannas of Africa. As forests gave way to open grasslands, early hominins had to adapt to life on the ground. One key adaptation was the development of bipedal locomotion, walking on two legs, to move more efficiently across larger distances between widely spaced trees. But mobility was only part of the puzzle. The dry seasons brought another hardship, a food crisis. Trees lost most of their leaves, and those that remained were tough and unpalatable. Fruits became scarce. Yet the savanna itself held a hidden bounty. Plants stored carbohydrates underground, in roots, bulbs, and tubers, waiting for the rains to return. To tap into this resource, our ancestors had to dig deep and chew hard, much like porcupines do today. Meanwhile, above ground, another opportunity presented itself. Herbivores, well adapted to feed on the sparse foliage of grasslands, sometimes fell prey to carnivores. Their carcasses, especially during dry spells, offered scraps of meat and nutrient-rich bone marrow. These were not easy pickings. Accessing them required a new kind of ingenuity, fashioning stone tools to scrape meat and crack open bones. This moment marked a turning point. As humans mastered tool use, changes in their bodies followed. Better movement, stronger jaws, greater heat resistance, and the beginnings of hunting skills that would allow them to compete with, and sometimes outsmart, predators. Of course, survival also meant staying off the menu themselves. Fossil evidence reveals 4 major adaptive shifts in human evolution. The first was the emergence of bipedalism in the late Miocene. Then came changes in dental structure, an increase in chewing power during the Pliocene, as early humans adapted to tough, underground foods. But this trend reversed as brain size began to grow and leg lengthened, setting the stage for a new kind of hominin. With the onset of the Pleistocene's shifting climates, cranial capacity surged. By the Middle Pleistocene, brain volumes approached modern levels, and facial features began to resemble our own. Although the fossil record is incomplete and uneven, it tells us much about our past. In Eastern Africa, hominin fossils have mostly been found near ancient rivers and lakes along the Eastern Rift Valley. In Southern Africa, most have come from limestone caves in the high interior plateau. Despite the gaps, the available fossils provide a timeline of evolutionary milestones, tracing the gradual transformation from early ape-like ancestors to the emergence of Homo sapiens. Somewhere between 12 and 7 million years ago, during the mid to late Miocene, a crucial evolutionary chapter unfolded. The lineage that led to us diverged from our closest relatives, the chimpanzees. The earliest evidence of upright walking comes from 2 enigmatic fossil discoveries. The first is the now famous Toumai skull, found in the desert sands of Chad and officially named Sahelanthropus chadensis. Dated to about 7 million years ago, this fossil shows a subtle but telling change. Its foramen magnum, the hole where the spinal cord connects to the brain, is positioned further forward, suggesting an upright bipedal posture. Its teeth fall somewhere between those of chimpanzees and the later Australopithecus, the so-called ape men. But intriguingly, its brain was still no larger than that of a chimpanzee. The second fossil find comes from the Tugen Hills of Kenya. Orrorin tugenensis, dated to about 6 million years ago. While the remains are fragmentary, mostly jaw, limb, and foot bones, they hint at a creature better adapted to walking upright than any ape of its time. The fossil record becomes clearer with the discovery of Ardipithecus, dating between 5.7 and 4.4 million years ago in what is now Ethiopia. These early hominins show a mix of features. Their legs and feet suggest a shift toward upright walking, yet they retained a grasping big toe, perfect for climbing trees, a lingering echo of their arboreal past. The next major chapter unfolds with Australopithecus anamensis, appearing between 4.2 and 4 million years ago in a region stretching from northeastern Ethiopia into northern Kenya. These ape men made further strides in upright walking, with more advanced ankle and leg bones, but still no increase in brain size. Their teeth, however, began to tell a different story. Smaller incisors and canines, but bigger molars with thick enamel, adaptations for chewing tougher plant foods. Their presence was notable given that they densely populated the region. Their world was a mosaic of habitats, dense woodlands interspersed with open grasslands dotted with lakes and rivers. It was a land alive with diversity: elephants, fruit-eating monkeys, and leaf-browsing antelopes. Interestingly, these early Australopithecus species fed exclusively on C3 plants, trees, shrubs, and herbs, indicating a diet that hadn't yet adapted to the grassy savanna. Then came Australopithecus afarensis, flourishing between 3.85 and 2.95 million years ago. This species spread widely across East Africa, and among its members was one of the most iconic fossil finds in history, Lucy. Discovered in Ethiopia and named after the Beatles' song playing during the celebration of her discovery, Lucy was remarkably complete. She revealed much about how our ancestors walked, and so did the famous footprints at Laetoli in Tanzania, 3 individuals walking bipedally across freshly fallen volcanic ash some 3.6 million years ago, leaving a permanent trace of their journey.
Around 3.4 million years ago, another hominin entered the scene, Kenyanthropus platyops. With a flatter face and smaller molars, it may have signaled the beginning of a shift toward the more gracile features seen in early Homo. About 2.9 million years ago, the evolutionary tree split into 2 distinct branches. One led to a lineage of powerful-jawed hominins with enormous chewing teeth, nicknamed Nutcracker Man. The earliest of these robust forms appeared in the Omo Valley of southwestern Ethiopia, around 2.7 million years ago, and shortly after in Kenya's Turkana Basin. They are now classified in a separate genus, Paranthropus. These hominins were specialized for heavy-duty chewing, and though they persisted for over 1 million years, Paranthropus boise surviving until around 1.3 million years ago, they were relatively rare in the fossil record, making up less than 1% of local faunal remains. The earliest fossils confidently placed in the genus Homo were discovered in the Afar region of northeastern Ethiopia. Dated to nearly 2.8 million years ago, these fossils show features that are intermediate between Australopithecus afarensis and later early humans from around 2.4 million years ago. At that time, the habitat had become more open, with a landscape of grasslands mixed with forested areas along water sources. This shift in environment brought new species of animals, including the earliest wildebeests. Australopithecus sediba had some skull characteristics similar to early Homo species, suggesting it could be a link between Australopithecus and early Homo. It had a mix of primitive and advanced traits, distinguishing it from other species. In terms of body size and limbs, Sediba resembled other Australopiths, but had some features similar to Homo, potentially making walking and running more efficient. Sediba had a small cranial capacity and specific skull features, suggesting it descended from Australopithecus africanus, and had more similarities to Homo than other Australopiths. After a gap of about 400,000 years, more fossils identified as early Homo appeared not just in Ethiopia, but also farther south in Kenya and Malawi. This time gap coincides with the onset of the climatic changes that led to recurring ice ages, marking the beginning of the Pleistocene epoch. More complete fossils of early humans, such as skulls of Homo habilis, have been found in the Omo-Turkana Basin and Olduvai Gorge, dating to around 1.9 million years ago. Known as handyman, Homo habilis was associated with the earliest known stone tools of the Oldowan culture. These early humans had larger bodies and brains than their Australopith ancestors. Their faces were less protruding, jaws and molars smaller, and legs longer. In South Africa, early Homo fossils are found in cave sites, but are often too fragmentary to confidently assign to a species. These early humans were rare in the region, making up less than 0.1% of large mammal fossils, suggesting they were either uncommon in that region or less likely to end up preserved in caves compared to species like Paranthropus. Homo ergaster emerged around 1.9 million years ago in the Omo-Turkana Basin, though it became more common only after 1.7 million years ago. It is often grouped with Homo erectus, which later spread into Asia. These early humans appeared during a period of increasing climatic extremes and arid conditions in East Africa. They had larger brains than Homo habilis, were tall and capable of efficient walking, and may have been early long-distance runners. Their teeth were smaller than those of earlier species, but their skulls still showed features like sloping foreheads and pronounced brow ridges. Interestingly, a juvenile Homo ergaster skull found in South Africa dates to around 2.0 million years ago, possibly earlier than similar fossils in East Africa. Additional specimens from Swartkrans in South Africa date to shortly after 1.8 million years ago. Homo habilis and Homo ergaster may have coexisted until about 1.4 million years ago. It is still debated whether they were distinct species or just different forms of the same species. Over time, Homo ergaster showed gradual increases in brain size and a reduction in molar size. Eventually, Homo ergaster gave rise to Homo heidelbergensis around 800,000 years ago. This new species appeared in both Africa and Europe and had a brain nearly as large as that of modern humans. Homo heidelbergensis is believed to be the direct ancestor of Neanderthals in Europe. These relatives of modern humans had a more robust build, prominent brow ridges, and sloping foreheads. Genetic evidence suggests that Neanderthals branched off from the main human lineage in Africa around 500,000 years ago. The oldest fossils that can clearly be assigned to Homo sapiens come from Morocco and date to between 300,000 and 350,000 years ago. These early humans had reduced facial size, but still retained some primitive features like brow ridges and a less rounded skull. Other early skulls from places like Zambia and Tanzania also date to this period and are considered to be early or transitional forms of Homo sapiens. More definitive modern human fossils, including those from Herto, Omo, and Turkana in East Africa, date to between 160,000 and 195,000 years ago. These specimens are widely accepted as early representatives of modern humans. One unusual species, Homo naledi, adds a surprising twist to the human story. Found deep in caves in South Africa, Homo naledi had a small but complex brain, and while their bodies were adapted for walking, their hands still had long fingers suited for climbing. Although their skeletons resemble those of early humans from around 2 million years ago, their fossils date to just 280,000 years ago. They appear to have coexisted with Homo ergaster for over 1 million years, but have not been found elsewhere. By about 130,000 years ago, modern humans appeared in the Levant region of the Middle East, though they did not stay there long. The major migration of modern humans out of Africa took place around 60,000 years ago. These early migrants likely followed coastlines through southern Asia, reaching Australia by about 55,000 years ago. By 47,000 years ago, they had entered Europe, where they replaced the Neanderthals within a few thousand years. During the late Miocene, Earth's climate became cooler and more seasonal, leading to the spread of grasslands and the reduction of continuous forest cover. This environmental change posed challenges for early hominins who previously moved through dense tree canopies. As tree cover declined, from over 90% in forests to less than 30% in savannas, ape-like ancestors had to travel much farther on the ground to find fruit-bearing trees. This shift made knuckle walking or inefficient bipedal waddling impractical. Instead, fruit-eating apes became restricted to areas where tree cover remained moderately dense or was found in patches, like along riverbanks or moist savanna strips. In response to these conditions, natural selection favored physical adaptations for efficient bipedal walking. While the hind limbs evolved for upright movement on land, the forelimbs retained climbing abilities to help escape predators or reach fruit in trees. Bipedalism also offered advantages like an elevated viewpoint to spot predators and the ability to carry food or tools with hands. The seasonal nature of savanna environments further influenced locomotion. During the dry season, food sources like leaves and herbs became scarce, forcing animals to move more to find food. This is evident in the foraging patterns of modern-day kudas, which take 3 times more steps during the dry season to get the same amount of food. Kudas tend to remain near rivers or hills where evergreen foliage persists, avoiding drier open savannas where food is even scarcer. Early hominins began showing significant bipedal adaptations with Ardipithecus, which lived around 5 million years ago. These included longer legs, altered pelvic joints, and stiffer ankles for better walking. The position of the foramen magnum, the hole where the spine connects to the skull, also shifted to support an upright posture. By around 3.6 million years ago, Australopithecus species had become competent bipedal walkers, as shown by preserved footprints at Latoli in Tanzania. Later, 1.7 million years ago, early humans like Homo ergaster had evolved into highly efficient walkers and possibly runners, with locomotion abilities similar to modern humans. As the Pliocene climate became drier, fruit-bearing trees became more scattered, and open grasslands began to dominate. While young grass could still be eaten by some primates, older grass turned fibrous and hard to digest, especially in the dry season. To survive, early hominins had to dig for food underground, mainly tubers, bulbs, corms, and rhizomes, which stored nutrients and remained available even when surface vegetation dried out. Other animals like mole rats, porcupines, warthogs, and baboons were already adapted to exploit these underground resources, and the Australopiths joined this group of root eaters. This dietary change is reflected in the fossilized teeth of Australopiths. They developed bigger molars with thick enamel for heavy chewing and reduced canine teeth to avoid interfering with grinding. These traits became especially pronounced in Paranthropus species, whose massive jaws and large molars helped them chew hard and brittle fallback foods during the dry season. Even so, fruits and softer plant foods probably remained important during the wet season. The distribution of underground tuber-producing plants favored certain landscapes, like sandy soils mixed with wetlands, particularly in miombo woodlands, possibly found in parts of Zambia and Ethiopia. Scientists have also used microscopic wear on fossil teeth and carbon isotope analysis to understand ancient diets. These methods suggest that Paranthropus relied heavily on hard plant parts like corms and seeds, often found in wetland grasslands, while the more gracile Australopiths ate softer bulbs and possibly included some meat in their diets. Carbon isotope data reveal that Australopithecus africanus and Paranthropus robustus consumed significant amounts of C4 plants, grasses or animals, that fed on grasses, making up 30 to 40% of their diet. Interestingly, Eastern African Paranthropus species had even higher C4 consumption, up to 80%, suggesting a more grass-based or grass-fed animal diet. However, wear patterns showed that southern African species ate more leafy materials. Australopithecus sediba, dated to around 2 million years ago, consumed only C3 plants, despite living alongside large mammals that fed on C4 grasses. Over time, the robust jaw structure seen in Australopiths gave way to a more gracile dental form in early Homo, such as Homo ergaster, which appeared around 1.65 million years ago and showed a dietary shift toward more C4-based foods. Although Paranthropus and early Homo lived side by side for nearly 1 million years, the robust-jawed forms eventually disappeared, likely because increasing aridity made their heavy-chewing lifestyle unsustainable. In contrast, smaller animals like porcupines needing less food could maintain such diets. Homo naledi, which lived around 2 million years ago, may have had a different diet. It likely fed on small herbs, seeds, and grassland insects or rodents. Since large animals were rare in the high-altitude grasslands where Homo naledi lived, it was probably not a hunter or scavenger like some of its relatives. The exact ecological role of Homo naledi remains unclear and is a subject for further study. As the climate became drier during the late Pliocene, food grew scarce for early hominins. However, carcasses of large herbivores, especially during dry seasons or droughts, provided valuable energy and nutrients. While digging for tubers, Australopithecus species may have also found rodents, reptiles, and insects, adding animal protein, similar to modern chimpanzees and baboons. Though early hominins couldn't kill large herbivores, they likely scavenged remains of predator kills or animals that died naturally. Large carnivores, saber-toothed cats, hyenas, leopards, and lions hunted mostly at night. Hominins foraged during safer daylight hours, especially in groups and near climbable trees. Predators often left behind marrow-rich bones and skulls with brain tissue. Saber-toothed cats, which hunted thick-skinned animals, may have left more remains than modern lions. Leopards' tree-stored kills could be stolen. In wooded areas with fewer vultures, scavenging was easier. Midday offered a safe scavenging window. Big cats rested and hyenas stayed in dens. Marrow and brains spoiled slower than meat, reducing food poisoning risk. During dry seasons, more animals died, increasing carcass availability. But like hyenas or jackals, hominins had to travel long distances to find them. Still, scavenging was a key survival tactic during food shortages. Research from the Serengeti found 2,000 kilograms of large carcasses per square kilometer annually, spiking to 5,000 kilograms per square kilometer in the late dry season, roughly 3 wildebeest-sized carcasses per square kilometer per week. Field studies found 1 carcass every 2 days in typical foraging zones, enough to reliably support early hominins. In regions like Kruger Park, overall carcass availability was lower, but near water sources during dry spells it rose, showing scavenging could be seasonally sustainable across Africa. Scavenging likely began as a fallback strategy during plant food shortages. It was safest at midday and gave access to energy-rich marrow and brain fat. Over time, this influenced dental evolution. Early Homo had smaller molars and thinner enamel, unlike the heavy-chewing Paranthropus. These dietary changes didn't require advanced tools. Large stones could break bones. Fat helped balance protein intake, critical for human physiology. Less body hair and better sweating helped early Homo scavenge in the heat. Upright posture freed hands to carry food, supporting group foraging. Males may have taken greater risks for meat, while females gathered plants. These resources were likely shared at central, wooded base camps with water and tree cover. Such pressures at the Pliocene-Pleistocene transition likely led to the divergence of Homo from Paranthropus, with opportunistic scavenging playing a key evolutionary role. Though scavenging supported survival, it offered limited food for high effort. During severe droughts, some weak animals may have been killed with sticks or stones, but this was unreliable. To secure meat more consistently, early humans evolved into hunters, especially during dry seasons when weakened animals gathered at water sources. Anatomical changes supported this shift. Homo ergaster had longer legs, less body hair, and greater endurance, enabling them to run in midday heat. Some used persistence hunting, chasing prey until it overheated. By 2 million years ago, they had developed projectile-throwing shoulders to use spears more effectively. Evidence of hunting includes butchery marks on bones dated to about 1.84 million years ago at Olduvai, showing that smaller animals were often hunted, while larger animals like elephants or buffalo were more likely scavenged, unless trapped in mud. In later fossil sites, human tool marks often appear before carnivore tooth marks, suggesting early humans had primary access to carcasses and thus were doing the hunting. Stable carbon isotope studies suggest that early Homo consumed more C4 resources, which likely came from the meat of grass-eating animals, not just grasses or seeds. This shift towards meat-eating helped early Homo outlast Paranthropus, which disappeared around 1.4 million years ago, perhaps due to its overly plant-based diet. Hunting encouraged gender-based division of labor. Males hunted and faced danger, while females and young foraged. This required a central home base where resources were shared and possibly stored. Archaeological evidence at Olduvai by 1.8 million years ago shows clusters of tools and bones, suggesting such a gathering place existed. As hunting grew more important, humans also needed better communication and planning, which likely drove the increase in brain size seen in the transition from Homo habilis to Homo ergaster. Despite this, fossils of Homo habilis remained present alongside Homo ergaster until about 1.4 million years ago, hinting at a long period of overlapping survival and gradual evolution. Early hominins like Australopithecus retained the ability to climb trees, which helped them avoid predators during the night. This arboreal competence is evident from their hand and foot bones. Like modern chimpanzees and gorillas, they likely built tree nests every night for protection. However, as human ancestors evolved into more terrestrial and larger-bodied species, such as Homo ergaster, their climbing abilities diminished. These changes made them more vulnerable to nocturnal predators, especially lions, leopards, and hyenas, which are primarily active at night. To cope with these threats, early humans may have adapted their habitats to provide safety. One strategy was likely to sleep in large trees, particularly near river margins where tall and climbable trees grew. Alternatively, they might have constructed protective barriers using thorny branches around their sleeping areas on the ground, similar to methods used by modern hunter-gatherer societies. Despite a general reduction in climbing abilities, some hominins like Paranthropus and Homo habilis retained traits that facilitated tree climbing, suggesting diverse survival strategies across species. With the evolutionary shift toward larger brains and longer lifespans, early humans began reproducing later, around ages 18 to 20. To offset this delay, human females had shorter interbirth intervals than other great apes, producing more offspring in a shorter span. This, combined with the extended post-reproductive role of grandmothers, improved child survival. However, to sustain population growth, adult mortality had to remain low, about 2% annually, much lower than rates seen in large prey animals subject to nightly predation. Nighttime posed the greatest danger, especially while sleeping or scavenging near carcasses. While daytime predator encounters were rare, unprotected sleep in predator-rich areas, like attacks on refugees in modern Kruger Park, showed the risks. Early humans likely relied on trees, barriers, and possibly fire for protection. Burnt bones and soil suggest fire use likely played a key role in deterring predators, cooking, and warmth. By 1 million years ago, hearths at Wonderwork Cave show clearer signs of cooking. Initially, hominins may have used smoldering logs from natural fires before learning to create fire themselves, marking a major step in reducing risk and shaping evolution. The transition from forest-dwelling, fruit-eating apes to savanna-dwelling, meat-supplementing hominins is best understood ecologically. As African forests gave way to grasslands in the late Miocene, hominins adopted bipedalism to cover longer distances and free their hands. Fruit scarcity during dry seasons pushed them toward underground foods like tubers, triggering dental adaptations, enlarged molars, and reduced incisors. These changes peaked in Paranthropus, a robust root eater. But this root-based niche had limits. As dry seasons grew harsher, even robust Australopiths couldn't survive on fibrous plants alone. Around the Pleistocene start, a new lineage began exploiting meat from carcasses, rich in marrow and brain tissue, available during dry seasons. Scavenging at midday when predators rested became a viable survival strategy. This shift spurred physical adaptations: hair loss for sweating, longer limbs for efficient movement, and bigger brains for managing complex foraging. Scavenging eventually led to hunting. Endurance running allowed early humans to outlast prey, a strategy unavailable to fur-covered predators prone to overheating. Hunting brought more reliable protein, reducing reliance on tough plants. However, longer legs and larger bodies reduced tree climbing ability, increasing nighttime risks, likely driving the use of fire to cook food and deter predators. Several ecological factors enabled this hunting-scavenging lifestyle, like abundant large herbivores in volcanic savannas, prey with bones manageable for transport, seasonal water scarcity concentrating animals near waterholes, humans' ability to forage during predator-inactive midday hours, and superior endurance running. Though fire evidence before 1.5 million years ago remains limited, its eventual use was critical for both safety and sustenance. The shift from root foraging to meat consumption was both a necessity, driven by ecological pressures, and an opportunity, made possible by seasonal prey abundance. This transition sustained Homo ergaster with relatively stable skeletal traits for nearly 1 million years, until later evolutionary leaps in brain size and tool use paved the way for modern humans.